The Golden State Warriors have added a number of pieces this offseason, reshaping their roster with size, defense, and veteran experience. They have re-signed Gary Payton II, brought back Al Horford, extended Kristaps Porzingis, and added D'Anthony Melton. On paper, this looks like a team that addressed multiple weaknesses. But analysts and insiders are pointing to one glaring hole that Golden State has not filled, and it might be the most dangerous problem heading into the new season. The question is simple and brutal. What happens to the Warriors' offense when Steph Curry sits on the bench? Golden State has struggled with this issue for years. Curry is the gravitational center of everything they do offensively. When he plays, the offense hums. When he rests, the engine stalls. The numbers from recent seasons tell the story clearly. With Curry on the court during the 2025-26 season, the Warriors posted an offensive rating of 119.1. With him off the court, that number dropped to 112.2. In 2024-25, the gap was even wider, 120.1 with Curry playing, and only 107.0 when he was off the floor. For most of last season, Jimmy Butler helped paper over that weakness. When Curry rested and Butler was still on the court, the offensive rating sat at a manageable 116.7 in 2025-26 and 113.9 in 2024-25. The problem is that when both stars were off the court simultaneously, the numbers cratered 110.9 and 104.2, respectively. Those are numbers that lose basketball games consistently, and they represent what Golden State will face for extended stretches once the season begins. With Butler out recovering from a torn ACL, the Warriors have now entered a new offseason without solving the structural problem. There is no player on the current roster who can reliably serve as an offensive hub for the second unit. None of their additions, Melton, Horford, or Porzingis, profile as a primary ball handler and scoring threat capable of keeping the offense afloat without Curry on the floor. The team currently has 13 players under standard contracts, and there is no reported trade in the works that would change that dynamic in the short term. The most frequently discussed solution is veteran guard DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan is a proven scorer who has posted positive net rating swings with his teams in 7 consecutive seasons. He can create off the dribble, get to the free throw line, and has enough playmaking ability to run a second unit. The problem is financial. Golden State can only offer him a veteran minimum contract, and DeRozan would likely prefer to chase a title with a top-tier contender than spend his final productive seasons on a team in transition. The Warriors are a long shot here, and they know it. The alternative would be a significant trade, one that likely involves multiple first-round picks, to land a player capable of both assisting Curry in the starting lineup and carrying the offense when Curry takes his nightly breaks. Most analysts believe such a trade is not imminent, despite the clear need. So where does that leave the Warriors? Their best realistic path runs through Kristaps Porzingis. The 7'2" Latvian is the team's second most dangerous offensive weapon when healthy. Last season, Porzingis averaged 24.5 points per 36 minutes, second only to Curry's 30.9, and his ability to operate from the perimeter and the post gives Steve Kerr options in lineup construction. If Porzingis arrives at training camp in peak shape and remains available throughout the season, he can at least partially serve as a secondary offensive option, both when Curry is on the court and when he is resting. For context, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the San Antonio Spurs each had 4 players averaging at least 20 points per 36 minutes last season. Golden State had 3, Curry, Porzingis, and Butler. Remove Butler from the equation, which is a reality for the foreseeable future, and the Warriors' offensive depth takes a serious hit compared to the league's elite teams. The secondary plan involves building defensively strong second-unit combinations, lineups featuring Melton, Brandon Podziemski, and Will Richard showed solid defensive numbers last season, which gives Kerr a foundation to work from. The idea would be to keep the deficit manageable during Curry's rest stints rather than expecting those lineups to outscore opponents. Break even on defense, minimize the damage, and let Curry take it from there when he returns. The Warriors are, in essence, betting on health and on Porzingis' potential. That is a gamble. Porzingis has a well-documented injury history. Butler's return timeline from ACL surgery is uncertain, and Curry himself is 38 years old. Asking him to carry an even heavier offensive burden than usual game after game, because the second unit cannot hold its own, is a significant ask of any player at that stage of his career. The fact that this question remains unanswered as the offseason winds down is a clearer sign that the Warriors are entering next season with real vulnerabilities, no matter how optimistic the offseason additions might look on the surface. The Golden State Warriors made their final move of the 2026 NBA draft when they selected Florida State wing Ley Jones in the second round. The 22-year-old was expected to add forward depth to a roster that needed versatile, switchable defenders who could grow within Steve Kerr's system. Jones had a solid showing during Summer League, flashing the kind of two-way potential that made the Warriors believe he was worth stashing for future use. But a fresh legal development now gives Jones an entirely different option, and it could keep him out of Golden State's rotation for an entire year. Here's the situation. The Warriors and Jones have not yet officially signed a contract. That is not entirely unusual for second-round picks at this stage of the summer, but the team was reportedly weighing a common strategy for late draft selections, asking Jones to spend the upcoming season playing professionally in Israel, where he holds a passport, before joining the organization fully in 2027. The idea was to let him develop in a professional setting without placing him on the NBA roster, saving cap flexibility while keeping his rights. That plan now has a direct competitor, a return to college basketball. The NCAA has been under legal pressure for years to reform its eligibility rules, which historically limited players to 4 years of competition after enrolling. Courts across the country repeatedly sided with players who sought additional eligibility, particularly international athletes and those impacted by injury or the COVID-shortened season. In response, the NCAA officially adopted a new rule this summer capping total eligibility at 5 years from high school graduation, regardless of circumstance. On the surface, that change was meant to create a clean, universal limit. However, it also had an unintended consequence. Players who competed as true freshmen could now complete 5 full seasons, up from a previous 4-year standard. For Jones, the timing of that rule was initially irrelevant. He graduated high school in 2022, putting him in a class that appeared not to benefit from the new policy. That changed abruptly when a Colorado judge issued a preliminary injunction last week, ruling that members of the high school class of 2022 were also immediately eligible to return to college competition under the new framework. Overnight, Jones and dozens of draft picks in similar situations found themselves with a genuine choice. The implications for Jones are significant. If he returns to college basketball, he would almost certainly receive more playing time and more money than he would get on a minimum deal with the Warriors or in an overseas league. Jones was a standout defender at Florida State and would likely start for the majority of programs in the country. College basketball has also changed dramatically in terms of compensation, with the name, image, and likeness landscape allowing programs to pay players at levels that would have been unimaginable 5 years ago. A school with strong nil infrastructure could offer Jones a financially attractive package to come back for a 5th year. From the Warriors' perspective, the situation is manageable regardless of which path Jones chooses. Golden State retains his NBA draft rights whether he plays overseas or in college, so the team does not lose its claim to the player. The front office could potentially even guide Jones toward a nearby school or a program that runs concepts similar to Kerr's system, allowing Jones to continue developing in a familiar basketball environment while staying in Golden State's orbit. If Jones returns to college this season, the Warriors would plan to bring him in during the summer of 2027. That timeline aligns with a critical moment for the organization as it navigates its long-term roster construction, particularly in anticipation of a potential run at a major free agent target like Nikola Jokic, whose contract situation with Denver becomes relevant that same year. For now, the Warriors are waiting. Jones has not made a public statement about his intentions, and no school has officially announced interest. But the window has opened, and the decision belongs entirely to the young player. He can chase NBA minutes on a minimum contract, pursue professional seasoning in Israel, or return to the college game he clearly excelled in and collect a potentially larger paycheck in the process. Each option carries real merit, and each would take Jones down a different road. The Warriors drafted him knowing there was no guarantee he would contribute in year 1. That reality has not changed. It has simply been complicated. Golden State must now monitor the situation and prepare contingency for a player who may not wear a Warriors jersey until the 2027-28 season. In a crowded forward rotation that already includes Yaxel Lendabor, Guay Santos, and Kristaps Porzingis, Jones was always a developmental piece rather than an immediate contributor. If he spends another year sharpening his game, he might be a better one when he finally arrives. The Golden State Warriors officially announced the re-signing of D'Anthony Melton this weekend, bringing back the veteran guard on the taxpayer mid-level exception. The move passed other available options, including Anthony Simons, in favor of a player the organization already knew and trusted. But while the decision makes clear basketball sense in the right circumstances, it also exposes a deeper problem the Warriors cannot escape heading into next season. And that problem has a name: dependence on Steph Curry. Melton's return is not simply a roster transaction. It is also a statement about how the Warriors intend to build their lineups. And the data makes it unmistakably clear how much his effectiveness rises and falls based on Curry's presence on the floor. Last season, Melton and Curry shared a net rating of plus 12.1 in their 231 minutes together. That is a commanding number. It reflects how well Melton functions as a complementary piece alongside Curry. Focus on perimeter defense, catch-and-shoot opportunities, and secondary ball handling without being asked to carry the offensive load himself. 2 seasons ago, before Melton suffered his own torn ACL, the pairing showed similar promise in limited minutes. The argument could be made that Melton deserves a starting role over Brandon Podziemski, given how well those two-man combinations worked. Melton also thrived alongside Jimmy Butler before the latter's catastrophic ACL injury. The two shared a net rating of plus 22.7 across 220 minutes, an elite mark that helped fuel the Warriors' 12-4 record prior to Butler going down. In those stretches, Golden State's non-Curry lineups were functioning in a way that had rarely been seen from this team in recent years. Melton could play off Butler the same way he plays off Curry, defending, shooting catch-and-shoot threes, running the second unit, without being its primary engine. The problem is what happens when those two stars are unavailable. And right now, Butler is unavailable. He tore his ACL and has no clear return date for the early portion of next season. That means Melton will spend a significant number of minutes this year without either of the two players who allow him to operate at his highest level. The numbers from the final stretch of last season make that risk painfully clear. Over a 27-game stretch late in the 2025-26 campaign, when both Curry and Butler were sidelined, Melton was forced into an expanded role he was not equipped to handle. He averaged 13.5 points, 3.8 rebounds, and 2.9 assists per game in those contests, but his shooting efficiency fell sharply, 38.4% from the floor and just 26.7% from three-point range. He also averaged 2.2 turnovers, which is a meaningful number for a secondary creator who is supposed to protect the ball. Those are the statistics of a solid complementary player suddenly asked to be a lead initiator, and the gap between those roles was visible every night. In those same 27 games, players like Podziemski and Guay Santos showed greater ability to step into larger offensive responsibilities. Melton, who was also dealing with minor injury during that stretch, struggled to elevate his game in a way that a team needs its third or fourth option to do when the stars are gone. That does not diminish what he is, a valuable two-way guard who could be an excellent piece on a championship-level team. But it reinforces the reality that his value is conditional. What does this mean for Steph Curry? It means that the pressure on the 38-year-old superstar to simply be available every night is now at its highest point in years. The Warriors do not just need Curry to play well. They need him play consistently, to minimize rest, and to compensate for the second unit's offensive limitations by returning to the court and reestablishing control before deficits become too large. The team is built around his presence in a way that allows very little margin for normal load management. The Warriors chose Melton over Simons, knowing that Melton's ceiling within the system is higher when the stars are healthy. That logic is sound. But it also means the organization is doubling down on a core assumption, that Curry stays healthy and available at a high level deep into the season, something that cannot be guaranteed for any player, let alone one in his late 30s. Golden State is betting heavily on that assumption, and the Melton re-signing is the latest proof that the franchise understands a bet is made. Now Curry has to hold up his end of the deal. Still, no rotation decision changes the fundamental arithmetic. The Warriors, as currently constructed, lack a legitimate second offensive engine, someone capable of creating their own shot, drawing defensive attention, and generating points without relying on Curry's gravitational pull open the floor. Melton is not that player by design. He performs best as a complementary piece, not a lead initiator. The Melton signing was the right call for what this roster is. It was simply a reminder of how much still depends on one player staying healthy and available night after night.